We'll start the bidding at 1 million yen. Excuse me, I stand corrected. I present a one-eyed ghoul.
Right here, 125, and how about a buy, 125, 727, 8, and 29 now, 30, 34, and how about a down to the bill, 1 get that way to fulfill is 2 now, 3, down, 133, 4, 34 to the bill, 5, $1.35, 5 now, 6 to the bill, now 136 and 77, how about a 77 on the bill, $1.37, how about a fade, 8 to the bill, 37, how about a fade, 9 now, 139, 939, 40, $1.40 to the bill, down, 39, 9 to the bill, 40, 139, 40, so $139 for the one number 220 on 6X, 220 on 6X.
I hope you guys enjoyed my intro for this review, guys. I had so much fun coming up with that idea and editing that together because, in all honesty, I would much rather have that implemented into the actual episode because Studio Period has shown us that they don't really feel like adapting the source material properly. So why not just have fun with this adaptation and start adding in original content? That way, when I'm walking into every new episode, I'm just on the edge of my seat. I'm like, man, what are they gonna add into this episode next? They're not following the manga, but they're adding in some funny and hilarious stuff in here because I would have enjoyed that more than with what I actually got in this episode, guys. Episode 4 of Tokyo Ghoul was meh and average. Like, I honestly did not enjoy this episode. It felt dull, it felt lifeless. Animation, they cheaped out on a lot of sections within this episode that I noticed right out of the gate. And I was like, really? You're gonna cheap out now during the hype of the auction raid arc, the arc that you've been rushing to get to? I understand if you want to cut out all of the character development, but you're going to cheap out on the action and the fight scenes during the start of this arc. I am hoping that they don't cheap out when it comes to the fights later on because with that teaser, they're showing us Takizawa and Heise about to go at it. So if they cheap out on that fight as well, what hope is there for this adaptation? So guys, for this review, I'm not going to talk about every single aspect of episode 4. Mainly what I want to do is just dive into some of the positives that I was able to take away from this episode, and then I'll dive into some of the big negatives that I had with episode 4. But strangely enough, for the most part, the manga to anime adaptation I think was handled pretty well and actually leans more towards the positive spectrum for me. But I'm saying for the most part because looking at the chapters and seeing what was adapted, they handled it pretty much averagely. But it left me pretty disappointed because there were 2 scenes for my 2 favorite characters that were kind of cut out or missing within this adaptation. One for Juzo and one for Takizawa. For Juzo, they did not adapt this awesome shot of Juzo unleashing his knives from his prosthetic leg and having this devilish grin on his face as he's about to throw it into the crowd to kill some ghouls and to kick off the auction raid arc. What actually we get in this episode is just a zoomed out shot that felt very cheap and allowed them just to save on some animation as Juzo was kicking off the auction raid arc. I felt pretty disappointed in that department because having a zoomed in shot on Juzo's face in that moment, I think would have added more excitement into that scene. And the second shot that wasn't adapted deals with Takizawa's introduction. In the manga, we have this awesome and creepy shot of Takizawa, now turned half ghoul. His hair's turned white, his lips are now black, and his hands are crawling over his face and mouth, and he's replying to Eto saying, "Send me in there. I am starving." This makes you ask so many questions about Takizawa's character in this moment. You're wondering, where has he been and what has he been through? And this would have been much more impactful than the scene that we actually got where they basically cheaped out and just zoomed in on the lower half of Takizawa's face and have him smile. Okay, so we accidentally started off with 2 negatives, but now let's actually dive into the positives that I liked in this episode. And there aren't really a lot of positives that I have with this episode, but the big one that I am able to take away from watching episode 4 is the music. The music playing in the background was phenomenal this episode. It definitely set the mood, and you can always guarantee that the music within Tokyo Ghoul from season 1 to Route A and now to Tokyo Ghoul Re, it has always been good. There was even a moment within this episode where I kind of just stopped paying attention and just listened to the music, and I was like, damn, this music is good. Another positive that I have from this episode was actually getting to see the clowns animated, just getting to see them joking around on stage and adding some levity to the overall blandness of this episode. Getting to see Roma, Uta, even the big guy. Don't remember his name, but honestly, he's not all that important because Roma and Uta, I think for anime onlys, they're going to be very confused. They're going to be like, wait, why are they a part of a clown organization? What is going on right now? It sucks, but if they adapted season 2 properly, you guys would probably understand. But just getting to see them in this episode was very fun for me, especially when Roma was pretending to like die from that injury she got from the CCG investigator, and then just immediately impaled him with her Kagane. Very good moment. And then also getting to see Roma dodge a Quinque attack, and you see Uta take that right into the chest. Roma lands on his shoulders, and he's just standing there like, wow, that tickles. Getting to see the clowns animated was definitely a highlight in this episode. And even though I did not get my manga scenes with Takizawa and Juzo, I still enjoyed their characters within this episode. So those stuff right there are my main positives and takeaways from episode 4. But now it's time to dive into the negatives of this episode. And there are a few I have, with them mostly being on the anime front. And my big problem that I have with this episode is that the animation felt cheap in this episode, it felt lazy, and you could definitely tell that the studio was cutting corners during the second half of this episode. Because there was one scene in particular that comes to my mind immediately within this episode that goes to show how lazy the fighting actually was. And it has to deal with the scene when Heise was fighting off the ghouls, and we got the commentary from 2 CCG investigators that were onlooking at Heise fighting. They were basically telling us, like, Heise is on the level, skill-wise, of Arima. He has the fighting skills and style of Arima, and then when we cut over to Heise, we don't see anything special in his fight choreography or in any of his moves. He basically dodges and he slices. How is that in any way on the level of God tier Arima? This is where the classic rule of show don't tell has to come into effect, because they are not showing us how good Heise is. They are basically just having 2 fodder investigators explain to us through the anime that yes, Heise might be on the level of Arima. You might not see it in the choreography, but we'll tell you through the dialogue. Plus, I also feel that this episode had perfect moments to build mystery and tension, and just avoided that altogether. And I start to ask my question, why wouldn't you add tension and mystery into this situation? And the scene perfect to describe this is when Uta whispers into Mitsuki's ear, because within this episode, we hear what Uta says in Mitsuki's ear, and we don't really get any tension or mystery in that moment. But in the manga, we don't hear that moment until Mitsuki is stuck in the closet thinking about the situation, how she's trying to get away from everybody, and then she starts to reminisce what Uta says, and we learn what he says. If they actually just cut out what Uta said in that situation, it would have added so much more mystery and tension. We would have begun to ask questions like, what did Uta say to Mitsuki in that situation? Why does Mitsuki look shocked? You gotta start adding in these mystery moments just to build tension and to make people watching it be like, what's going on in this situation? I'm intrigued. And then get the answer later on in the episode. But it felt so cheap just to get it in that moment, because what's the point of building up tension and mystery within this series that focuses on tension and mystery? So to round out this episode, we see the CCG beginning the auction raid, fighting back against the ghouls. We see Naki, Gagi, Gugi, and Miza fighting back against the investigators. Mado comes in to fight Naki and giving Naki the stank eye Mado look, which was kind of nice to see in that moment. But then we see Kano and Eto looking at computer screens, seeing all unfold, and they end up sending Takizawa in. Pineapple enters in this episode, and even though I did not get my iconic scene with Takizawa, I still like getting to see him pop up and just crush the head of that investigator and basically say, ah, like a freshly picked pineapple, and he has the jam just rolling down his arm. That was a cool moment to end off in this episode, but I didn't feel anything throughout this episode because it just felt like nothing was built up, nothing was earned. We had no build up upon these characters, and it just feels like a lackluster production, just being an ad for the manga of Tokyo Ghoul. So there you have it, guys. That is my review and thoughts on episode 4 for Tokyo Ghoul. I know I didn't cover everything within this episode in my review, but I figured if the anime isn't going to cover everything from the manga, then my review shouldn't cover everything within the anime. Ooh, shots fired. Anyway, guys, we have 8 episodes left until we're done with this series, until we're done with this adaptation. But I already know that the real reason that us manga readers are sticking with this series is because we're waiting for that glorious moment to see Furuta, to see Chuckles the Ass Clown, the troll himself in all his glory, utter his first words, and then get his reveal of him just being an utter troll. At least that's what I'm hoping for, but I bet you Studio Period is going to butcher him entirely. But I'm still having high hopes, at least for his character, and that's why I'm slogging through this adaptation just to see the glorious reveal that is Furuta, and I hope you guys are as well. But with that being said, guys, I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts on episode 4. Did you guys have any positives? What were your negatives that I did not cover within this review? Let me know, guys. Are you excited to eventually get to Furuta? Because I know I am, and I bet many manga readers are as well. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below, guys. And if you guys want to talk more about Tokyo Ghoul, the anime, or the manga, feel free to follow me on Twitter. A link can be found in the description down below. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Until next week when we have episode 5 of Tokyo Ghoul Re, I'll talk to you all next time.